free. May we all be free.
Every year, Freedom from Diabetes helps people from across the world overcome diabetes, many of them reversing it to the point where they are able to pass the glucose tolerance test, considered by medical professionals to be the ultimate test of reversal. 6 years ago, 2 years from our inception, we felt the need to celebrate the success of our participants, and thus Muktotsav was born. Muktotsav comes from the conjoining of Mukti, that is freedom, and Utsav, that is festival or celebration. And this is exactly what it is, a celebration, a festival of freedom. Freedom from diabetes. Over the years, the number of participants has grown tremendously. In 2015, we had around 15 GTT participants, and today, in 2020, that number has crossed the 250 mark, with 289 participants clearing GTT or IGT this year. The Global GTT Challenge 2020 has indeed been a huge success, and to bring it to a fitting conclusion, Muktotsav 2020 is being celebrated as the Global GTT 2020 Finale. The GTT Finale, which runs from 6th December to 9th December, will see our champions receive the recognition and felicitations their success deserves. But beyond this, their stories will also serve to be an inspiration and learning to others who still suffer from diabetes. 6th of December, the first day of the finale, is the day to present the Freedom Champions Awards. 7th of December, the second day of the finale, we shall present the Healthy Weight Loss and Athletic Champions Awards. 8th of December, the third day of the finale, shall see the presentation of the coveted GTT, that is Glucose Tolerance Test, Champions Awards. And the grand finale on the 9th of December has the internationally celebrated diabetes reversal pioneer, Dr. Neal Barnard, as the chief guest, with Dr. Pramod Tripathi as the host, takes center stage for a once-in-a-lifetime interaction. The learnings and inspiration promise to be exceptional. So, join in with your heart and soul to soak into the message of reversal of diabetes and all lifestyle disorders, thus making it a reality for you and many, many more in times to come.
A very good evening, good day, and good morning to all you wonderful people joining us live from across the country, across the world, on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram to witness this very momentous grand finale of a wonderful 4-day celebrations that have been happening, celebrations of freedom. Hundreds of participants from across the globe participated and took up the first of its kind online FFD's Global GTT Challenge, which went on for a few weeks. And the last 4 days have been the culmination of all this. And we have had awards and accolades. We've had some inspiration, some energy exchange, lots of joy and happiness, and lots of insights from renowned doctors who joined us as guests of honor. And well, today is day 4 and the pinnacle of our celebrations. And we are extremely honored, privileged, and greatly overwhelmed to have as our chief guest none other than the pioneer of diabetes reversal in the world, Dr. Neal Barnard from USA, joining us live, sharing with us some great insights with his presentation, and of course, having an interesting tete-a-tete with Dr. Pramod Tripathi, the founder of Freedom from Diabetes. Well, we are all excitedly looking forward to this wonderful session. People have tuned in with lots of energies and excitement, and I will shortly be calling on Dr. Pramod Tripathi to take over the proceedings. But before I do so, I would just like to read out a very heartfelt sharing by one of our participants of the Intensive Reversal Program, written by Anil Kumar VK from Batch 62. Thanks to your initiative, Dr. Pramod, that this has been possible. It takes a visionary to decide to embark on something so unbelievable where every other person would be jumping on you to prove you wrong. You went against the tide and persisted, and now the results are there for everyone to see. Yourself and your predecessors, we have and are honored to have him here to join us, who took this reversal path, have walked in the footsteps of greats like Galileo and Darwin, and proved the general understanding across the world to be incorrect. To add to that, you have a very pleasing personality and a jovial nature, and I think that's a killer combination you got there. And part of your success stems from that, as people like you and find your attempts genuine and honest. You do not have to walk with time, but walk with the truth, and time will walk alongside you. Such wonderful expression. Thanks to you once again, and to your awesome team for this option given to people around the world. Wishing you superlative success in your journey for years to come. Regards, Anil Kumar VK, Batch 62. Wow. And I think that is the sentiment that each of the thousands of people across the world who have been touched by this path of freedom, the pure natural path, the free path of freedom from diabetes, have in some form or the other experienced. Okay, so let me call on Dr. Pramod Tripathi, who's the founder of Freedom from Diabetes, which is a 120+ employee organization that integrates the best of diet, exercise, inner transformation, and medicine with the aim to get not only the diabetics, but family members also free from insulin, medicine, excess weight, and related lifestyle disorders. Well, the numbers as of today, that's the 9th of December, we've had 1,694 free from insulin and 6,186 free from medicine. That's a total whopping 7,300 plus who are free. Well armed with a degree of MB. Yes. That's a phenomenal number of people, in thousands, going free of their diabetic medicines as well as insulin. Armed with a degree, a medical degree from the BJ Medical College, Pune, a very renowned college here. He also holds a professional diploma in diabetes management from the Nanavati Hospital, Mumbai, an advanced diploma in yoga and Ayurveda, and advanced NLPK practitioner. Well, these are systems of healing which have been integrated in this program. He has traveled across 10 countries and trained 150 plus corporates on stress and health management. And some of these have been incorporated into making this program very, very effective. Well, just a little more before I move on. He has been the recipient of many awards: the Top 50 Healthcare Companies Award, IFA Dubai 2019, the Pharma Ratna Award in 2019, the Best Diabetes Care Award in 2017, and the most popular doctor, I'm sure most of you all will agree with that, which he got from the Walk Hard Foundation in 2016. He's also learned from many teachers along the way in so many past 20-30 years, and his strength lies in converting the teachings into actionable programs which create the transformation and the results that we see. Well, let us call on stage, without much ado, the man on a mission, working relentlessly towards diabetes reversal, the founder of Freedom from Diabetes, Dr. Pramod Tripathi.
Hello, 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 everyone. Such a delight to meet everyone once again. Day 4, many of you have been on the program for last 3 days, eagerly waiting for the last day to meet none other than our teacher, our inspiration, the chief guest, Dr. Neal Barnard. And I'm so excited, super excited, like a student. You know, the way a student gets to meet his teacher after a long time, because that was the first book I had come across. Thanks to Dr. Nandita Shah of Sharan. I give my deep regards to her, because through her I came to know that reversal is possible. I read Dr. Neal Barnard and many other books, and then of course it's been a huge journey over the last 7 years of integrating not only the diet but the exercise, the inner transformation, the medical part, putting up a team in place, doing programs which can give results and things like that. So super excited for the day. Without too much of time being taken by us, let's get on with inviting the chief guest for the day. And we all know, we all have been waiting for this day to ensure that we get a glimpse directly of Dr. Neal Barnard. Before he comes on stage, let's quickly look at some more details which many of us would be aware of, but it's always good time to pay a little bit more attention to all the wonderful things that Dr. Neal Barnard has brought into this world. He is the founder and president of Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, PCRM, which is known across the world, and also founder of the Barnard Medical Care Center, which models around making nutrition a routine part of medical care, making prevention as a strategy. He's an adjunct associate professor of medicine at the George Washington University School of Medicine, and he's got some wonderful awards: the Lifestyle Medicine Trailblazer Award 2016 from the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, ACLM, and the 6th Plantrician Project Luminary Award in 2019 from the Plantrician Project. Huge contributions that have happened. I would say that the line which is at the end summarizes a lot of things that have happened through him. His writings aim at empowering readers with life-changing information and knowledge, and it has led him to be on numerous research studies investigating the effect of diet on diabetes, on body weight, on chronic pain, hormonal balances, 90 scientific publications, authored key resolutions for the AMA policy for new focus on prevention and nutrition, authored more than 19 books on nutrition and health, which has created a revolution in thinking of contemporary modern medicine physicians, prolific writer, wonderful speaker. Let us call Dr. Barnard on stage with fireworks right now.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. It's very, very kind of you to allow me to be part of today's program. Thank you very much. I'm extremely grateful to you. And I also want to say that what you have accomplished is something that if we could have this made available to everyone on the planet, things would be so dramatically different. What you have done not only improves the lives of the participants themselves, but it also reaches out to their family members, to their community members, and it spreads waves throughout the countries where people are participating. But it does more than that, and that is that it shows what is possible. And that provides inspiration, not only to individuals in their day-to-day lives, but to physicians in practice and to governments who can now set policies with more confidence about what we can do to tackle these terrible scourges that we're dealing with of obesity, cardiovascular disease, and particularly diabetes. So thank you very much for allowing me to spend this time with you. May I share my screen and share some comments with you?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
If you don't mind, I would like to start by talking about the pandemic that we're dealing with right now, because as you'll see, it relates very strongly to nutrition and ultimately to diabetes. But when the COVID-19 pandemic emerged in China, very rapidly, it was clear that it was not a particularly democratic virus. In other words, it attacked different people very differently. For people who were normal weight, the likelihood of having severe disease, meaning you end up in intensive care or need to have a ventilator, or perhaps you may perish from the virus, it was 19% in normal weight people, 29% in overweight people, 39% in people who were obese, and surprisingly, although we often think of underweight people as being vulnerable, there was no one who was underweight who had serious disease at the beginning of the Chinese outbreak. And what that suggested is that there was something about carrying excess body fat that made this virus particularly deadly. And we believe that we know what that is. Fat cells might be thought of as just a bag of calories, but they're actually much more than that. They are factories that make all kinds of aspects of human metabolism. Among the things that a fat cell makes is the ACE2 receptor, angiotensin converting enzyme 2 receptor, which is expressed on the surface of the cell and is the point of attachment of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. In other words, one inhales the virus. It then it travels to the ACE2 receptor, and that's what acts as a welcome mat, bringing it into the cells. But there's more than that. Lung cells actually have what are called lipofibroblasts. It's a sort of a modified fat cell that allows the lung to be somewhat elastic. As you know, when you breathe in, your lungs stretch. When you breathe out, they contract. But as the disease progresses, these cells are converted to myofibroblasts and ultimately cause lung fibrosis, meaning the lungs can no longer expand and contract, and we end up with very, very severe disease. So fat cells, whether it's fat cells themselves or the lipofibroblasts, are part of the disease process. Let me show you what it looks like. At the top of the fat cell that you see at the center is a Y-shaped ACE2 receptor. That's where the virus attaches. It then enters the cell, replicates, and causes severe disease. So it turns out, though, that it's not just obesity. When we look at diabetes, as soon as the pandemic emerged, it was clear that people who had diabetes were more likely to die of this disease. 2.7% for people without diabetes, 7.8% mortality for people with diabetes in Hubei province in China at the very beginning of the pandemic. But it was not just a question of whether you had diabetes, it was a question of what was happening with your diabetes. People with diabetes in poor control had an 11% mortality. People whose diabetes was brought under control had a 1% mortality. Well, how did they define these terms? Poor control was defined as an A1C of around 8.1% and good control 7.3%. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute. If my A1C is 8.1%, can I get it to 7.3%? Easily. You can do it with medication, of course, very rapidly, but you can do this convincingly and healthfully with diet and lifestyle changes. And all the side effects are good ones. So what is a healthful diet that might help us tackle diabetes? I'm going to tell you something that you already know, and that is that different groups following different diets have a very different disease prevalence. And some of the most influential data come from large cohort studies. The Adventist Health Study 2 enrolled almost 61,000 people. And the reason that Adventists have been put under the microscope is because you have a large group of non-smoking, mostly teetotaling, health-conscious people, but they differ in diet. And in 2009, the American Diabetes Association published these data. Looking at meat eaters, or what they called non-vegetarians, their body mass index was higher than it should be. As you know, BMI is your weight, but it's adjusted for how tall you are. And the BMI, body mass index, we like to see it below about 25. Some even would say below 23, but the non-vegetarians were way above 25. They're at 28.8. Semi-vegetarians, defined as people who eat meat but less than once per week, they were a little thinner at 27.3, and pesco-vegetarians, consuming fish but no other meat, were only a little slimmer at 26.3. Now, lacto-ovo-vegetarians, people who consume dairy products but also eggs, were a little bit better at 25.7. But look at that blue line on the right. Now, I have to tell you, a vegan is not a person from the planet Vegas. A vegan is a person who consumes no animal products at all, and they were actually the only group in the healthy body mass index range. But when we look at diabetes, we see not only the same gradient, but it's much more severe. Meat eaters have a lot of diabetes. Vegans have very, very little diabetes. And that shows that when people follow this kind of healthy diet over the long term, they tend to do very well. Well, the question, though, is, what if I have diabetes already? Is there something that I can do? Well, in 2003, the National Institutes of Health asked our research team to do a head-to-head test of a conventional diet versus a plant-based diet. Now, what we did is we brought in individuals who had type 2 diabetes. On average, they'd had it for about 8 years, and half of them began the conventional diet. And that means 3 things. Limiting calories so that you're trying to lose weight. And I can imagine what you're thinking. You think, good heavens, if I have diabetes and my dietitian told me I had to cut a lot of calories off my diet every single day, it gets old by about Wednesday. But that's very common practice. The second step was to limit carbohydrate and keep it steady from day to day. And third was to limit bad fats, meaning saturated fat and trans fats. The plant-based diet was very different. It was no animal products, minimizing the use of oils. So we taught our participants ways of preparing food without adding oils, and favoring low glycemic index foods. And if that's in any way a new word, high glycemic index simply means that a food raises your blood sugar rather quickly, like white bread. White bread causes the blood sugar to rise rather rapidly. But beans or lentils have quite a very different effect. They have carbohydrate, but it's not absorbed into the bloodstream rapidly. So we call it low GI. So this is not a low carbohydrate diet at all. There's lots of healthy carbohydrate, but we choose the ones that are gentle on your blood sugar. So no animal products, minimize oils, favor the low glycemic index foods. And when we look at A1C, as you know, for a person with diabetes, we'd like to keep it below 7. Well, our participants started around 8, and on the conventional diet, the portion-controlled diet, they did well. That's the red line. They dropped by about 0.4, But the blue line shows people on the vegan diet, the plant-based diet. They dropped by about 1.2, maybe even a little bit more, which is huge. If you have an oral medication that can drop your A1C that much, that's a great medication. And it was called asparagus, or beans, or broccoli, or spinach. These are simple plant-based foods that have effectively a medicinal power. Okay, let me share with you the story of one of our very first research participants. His name was Vance. His father was dead by age 30, and he told me of family members who had lost legs or lost their vision to this disease. He was 31 when he was diagnosed with this disease, and he was in his late 30s when he came in to see us. But he began the vegan diet, and one of the first things he said was, "This is the easiest diet I've ever done." Now that was surprising, because many people imagine that a vegan diet is challenging. They imagine that it means changing and disrupting your lifestyle. He said, no, it's just the opposite. When I did an old-fashioned diabetes diet, they made me cut my calories, so I went to bed hungry every night. They made me count my carbohydrate grams at every meal. It was boring and tedious. But with a vegan diet, it just means instead of a meat stew, I have a lentil stew. Instead of a meat-based soup, I have a vegetable soup. Instead of meat on my spaghetti, I put a tomato sauce on my spaghetti noodles. It's easy. And as time went on, he lost about 60 pounds. His doctor stopped his diabetes medications, and his A1C fell from 9.5, which is poor control, to 5.3. And when we got his lab test, with an A1C of 5.3, which is not diabetic, nor is it in the pre-diabetes range, it's in the absolutely normal range, we started to recognize that this disease is not a one-way street. When I was in medical school, I was taught what you may have been taught, that once you have diabetes, you'll always have diabetes. Now, there's a reason why doctors have said that, is they want their patients to take this disease seriously. But here was a person who didn't always have diabetes. He had changed his diet and changed his lifestyle, and he could go into any clinic in the world, and they would never diagnose him as even having had this disease. So we now realized what is possible. Now, we then started working with a car insurance company here called Geico. It's one of our biggest insurance companies in America, and they have many people with diabetes on staff. And they asked if we would begin a program at work. And so we said, sure, let's do two things. Let's have vegan food in your cafeteria. So instead of bacon and eggs for breakfast, why not have oatmeal porridge? And they said, let's do that, and let's have classes for people. Now, there were a few missteps along the way. The cafeteria manager was not entirely sure what should go on a vegan burger, and had to learn that, no, you don't put bacon and cheese on your vegan burger if you don't mind. Sorry. They had to correct that. But as time went on, people who followed this program lost a substantial amount of weight compared with controls who did not follow the program and they didn't lose weight. And then when we looked at hemoglobin A1C, exactly what you'd predict to happen happened, is that it got better. And for people who didn't follow the program, it did not. So that was very convincing. And people beginning the program were thrilled. Their lives were transformed. They were able to lose weight. They were able to improve their health. And they started to feel that there were things they could do that they couldn't do before. Hillary and Bruce were our youngest participants in the first Geico study. And Bruce sent me this picture because he said, the two people on the left were embarrassed to go to the gym. They didn't feel like exercising, and we didn't eat very well. But after we went on a completely plant-based diet, we lost weight, and we regained energy, and then we felt like exercising again. And they sent me this picture when they ran their first half marathon. The idea is that these mental constraints that we often have about who we are and what we can do can dissolve away when we're on a healthier diet that gives us more possibilities. So in 2014, this meta-analysis looked at all the studies done up until that point looking at hemoglobin A1C in plant-based diets. If you're unfamiliar with a forest plot, it's this graph, and you see the third vertical line says 0. If you're to the left of that line, that means in this study, your hemoglobin A1C on average got better. And as you can see, that happened in every study. It's extremely consistent. When you put people on a plant-based diet, they tend to lose weight, their A1Cs come down. It's an extremely consistent effect, which is good. So a healthy diet, fruits, grains, vegetables, legumes, and don't forget your vitamin B12, which you need for healthy nerves and healthy blood. So let me walk you through how this works. Now, I know that many of the participants in this program have lots of expertise in how diet affects our health, and specifically on what happens at the cellular level. But for anybody who's in doubt, if you don't mind, indulge me in taking a minute and a half to describe what happens inside your cells, because I want to show you the cause of type 2 diabetes. And then I would ask you to share this with your physicians, because many of them forgot this part about medicine. What this big purple oval that you're seeing is a muscle cell. Muscles are powered by glucose. That glucose is in the blood, and it can't do any good for that muscle at all. That muscle will keep it out until you have a key that will let it come in. The muscle membrane keeps it out. But there is a key. That key is insulin. It's made in your pancreas, and the insulin goes from your pancreas through the blood to the surface of that muscle cell where it attaches to that receptor, just like a key in a lock. And when the insulin arrives at the surface of the cell, something wonderful happens. Just like a key can open a lock, that insulin key attaching to the receptor will open small channels on the surface of the cell that permit the glucose to come inside. And now the blood can free itself of all that excess sugar. It can go into the muscle cells where it belongs and can give you the energy that you need. Well, what could ever go wrong? Well, how could my insulin stop working? Well, in America, unfortunately, people have a dinner that looks like this, and they have a lunch that looks like that, and they have a breakfast that looks like that, and people eat all kinds of foods that are not so good for them. And these foods have fat in them, and that fat builds up inside the cell. And as animal fat or even vegetable oils will pack into the cell, the key no longer works. What do I do? Well, that fat is intramyocellular lipid. You remember that name. That's the fat that's inside the muscle cell, and the same thing happens in the liver cells, called hepatocellular lipid. If I go on a diet that has no animal products in it, how much animal fat is left? None. And if I keep oils low, the fat starts to dissipate. That's important because as long as the fat is there, the insulin key doesn't work. The cell membrane can't open up. The glucose bounces right off, nothing happens. But once I follow this healthy diet, little by little, the fat starts to disappear. And as that fat goes away, that key can work again. And as the insulin resistance melts away and insulin sensitivity returns, the glucose can come into the cell and everyone's happy again. Okay, good. So let me take you now to New Haven, Connecticut. Dr. Kit Peterson and Dr. Jerry Schulman brought in young people, and they tested them to look at their insulin function. Now, what they did is they brought in 26 young, thin, non-diabetic volunteers, and they asked them to have a glucose tolerance test, and some of you have had this test, where you drink syrupy goo, about 75 grams, and the sugar goes into your blood, and if everything goes well, you'll be insulin sensitive, meaning that your body is able to take the sugar that you swallowed. It goes into the blood, but it quickly goes into your muscle cells, out of the blood into the muscles. That's insulin sensitivity. But on the other hand, some people are insulin resistant. So I drink that syrup, and now the glucose builds up in my blood, and it stays there because the insulin cannot get it into your muscle cells. And it stays in the blood, and your doctor says your blood sugar is high. Okay, so let's look at these individuals. They were young, 28 years old for the insulin-sensitive groups, 26 for the insulin-resistant group. They were thin, 60 kilograms for one group, 64. These are not overweight people. And they did not have diabetes, 5.1, 5.2 A1C. Okay, however, we are now going to go into the MR spectroscopy machine, magnetic resonance spectroscopy. This is a technique that allows us to look into your muscles in real time. And I want to show you the results. On the left-hand side of your screen, you see intramyocellular lipid. These are the control subjects, the healthy subjects. Every dot here is a person. Now, if you compare the healthy people, whom you see depicted here, to the insulin-resistant people, the difference is obvious. The insulin-resistant people have a dramatic increase in their intramyocellular lipid. That's why they have insulin resistance. But there's more going on. If you look at their mitochondria, do you remember this from your high school biology? Your mitochondria are the burners inside your cells. They are what give you energy. Every dot here is a person. And if you compare, by the way, if you're having trouble seeing the entire screen, you can minimize the little photo strip on the right, and then you can see everything. As you can see, the individuals on the right who are insulin resistant have not only more intramyocellular lipid, they have less mitochondrial activity, meaning the fat that's getting into their muscle cells, also into their liver cells, is interfering with their cellular metabolism. Something's going wrong because of the fat. Now, I want to tell you that just last week, my group did a study that was published in JAMA Network Open. And this was a study done by Hanna Kaliova on our staff, and Kit Peterson and Jerry Schulman from Yale University. We worked together. We brought in 244 individuals. Half of them went on a healthy vegan diet. The other half went on a control diet. And then, after 16 weeks, we did a variety of tests on them. And the first test is you just put everybody on the scale. And what we saw was that the people in the control group didn't really lose much weight. The people in the vegan group lost, on average, 14 pounds, which is about 6.4 kilograms over 16 weeks. Very impressive. We then asked, why are they losing weight? Well, the first reason is they're eating more fiber, more plant roughage, which effectively has no calories, but it fills you up. Also, their diet is switching from fatty foods like cheese and meat and fried foods. Fat has 9 calories per gram, shifting to carbohydrate, which has only 4 calories per gram. Now, some of our participants were afraid of carbohydrate. They were thinking, good heavens, if I eat lentils and rice, the carbohydrate in there will make me gain weight. We have to remind them, carbohydrate has only 4 calories per gram. When we shift from the fatty foods to the carbohydrate foods, weight loss occurs. Okay, so we then looked at insulin resistance. So as these individuals were following a vegan diet, not only did they lose weight, but something else was happening inside their cells. Their insulin resistance was melting away. But in the control group, they were not getting better. So then we did a test called indirect calorimetry. And this is Dr. Kaliova administering this test. What you do is you lie down on the table, and I put over your face a plastic bubble that allows us to measure your carbon dioxide intake. Carbon dioxide output and your oxygen intake. If you are metabolizing slowly, you don't put out very much carbon dioxide. If your metabolism is high because your mitochondria are working, you're putting out a lot more carbon dioxide and taking in more oxygen. And that shows us your metabolism. Okay, so what did we find? If you come into our laboratory at 6 o'clock in the morning as one of our research participants, you're wearing your pajamas, you haven't had breakfast, and you lie down on our exam table. At that point, we discover your metabolism is very slow because you haven't had breakfast. At that point, I will give you a meal. And then your metabolism will rise for about 3 hours. That always happens because you're ingesting food and you're absorbing the nutrients. But after you've been following a vegan diet that's low in fat, after 3 or 4 months, come back, lie down on the same table, and let me give you the same breakfast. what we discover is that your metabolism is not the same. You burn even more calories after the meal, roughly 14-15% more calories in the after meal period. What's going on? Well, we call it the thermic effect of food. If you're ingesting food, maybe it will go straight to body fat. Or maybe some of the calories in that food will go to give you energy and be given off as body heat and not going to fat at all. Well, in the control group of our individuals, again, we had 244 people, 122 of them were in the control group. This is their after meal calorie burn. The white line is before they started. We fed them the meal. Their after meal burn rose, as it always does. 16 weeks later, we did the same test, and nothing much happened. It was the exact same rise. They weren't burning calories any better after 16 weeks than they were at the beginning. Well, look at the vegan group. The white line, again, is at the beginning. They were burning calories faster after the meal, as always happens after any meal. After following a vegan diet for 16 weeks, though, you have that light green line. And as you can see, after 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 120 minutes, they start to burn calories faster after the meal. It's not a dramatic difference. It's just a little extra advantage where the vegans are burning calories a little bit faster after every single meal. So why do people following a vegan diet lose weight? Part of it is they're eating lots of fiber and lots of carbohydrate. That reduces their calorie intake. But the other part is because after each meal, they're burning calories more like they did when they were 15 years old. Okay, so this is the MR scanner. And with MR spectroscopy, we can now look into our muscle cells. So our participants here in Washington, D.C., went to New Haven. They went to Yale University, where Dr. Kit Peterson put them in the MR scanner. And what we found is that liver fat specifically dropped 34% in the vegan group, and it didn't improve in the control group. So what we're seeing is that when people do this kind of diet, yes, they lose weight, but their insulin resistance starts to go away. Their mitochondria are freed up again. Their liver fat starts to diminish. In other words, it's not just changing the number on your scale, it's changing your body in a dramatic way. So this study, published just last week, shows that after 16 weeks, you see weight loss, you see improved insulin sensitivity, better metabolism, and reduced liver fat, substantially so. Okay, so let me go into a little more detail. Please fasten your seatbelt. I would like to talk with you about how fat slows your metabolism. It's true, the fatty meals that people eat, whether they're in India or in New York or in London or in Paris, all kinds, wherever they may be, people are eating all kinds of fat. And this is our muscle cell, and those are our mitochondria, and they are trying to give us energy. But fatty meals cause the fat to build up inside the cell, and that interferes with the mitochondrial action. So fat in cells slows your after-meal calorie burn. Your mitochondria can't burn calories if fat is getting in the way. What do? Wherever I may live in the world, I can get the animal products off my plate. And if I do that, the animal fat is gone. And if I keep the oils really low, something happens in my cells, which is the fat starts to dissipate. And then I get my after-meal calorie burn back. Very, very simple. Okay? All right. At Pennington Biomedical Research Center, individuals put this to the test, not over 16 weeks, but over 3 days. They asked individuals to eat an especially fatty diet. 50% of their calories were from fat. And what you see on the left is mitochondrial biogenesis. What that simply means is that our bodies will change our mitochondria. The mitochondria in your cells, these burners, aren't static. They don't stay the same. You don't have the number when you're 60 that you had when you were 17. You make more, you make less, they coalesce. They change constantly depending on the energy needs of the body. What the figures show is that when you eat a fatty meal, the number of the mitochondrial biogenesis switches from what you see in the white bar to what you see in the black bar. Fatty foods impair mitochondrial action. But they do so not over a year or 2 years or 5 years. They will do this within 3 days' time. It happens very, very rapidly. And the reverse happens rapidly as well. When we get the fat out of our diet, the cells rebound. You don't have to wait for 12, 15 years to get healthy. You've seen this. Many of the people in this program have seen how rapidly the changes can occur for the better. Okay, one other thing. This happens within your intestinal tract. The picture you're seeing here is a diagram of within your intestinal tract, you have bacteria, as you know. You have friendly bacteria that are making healthful products, but you also have some not very friendly bacteria. And they produce toxins called endotoxins. And normally, those bacteria stay in your intestinal tract, and the endotoxins stay in your intestinal tract too, so they can be flushed down the toilet. However, in some cases, they can pass down into your bloodstream. As you can see in the bottom of this slide, the toxins produced by the bacteria can slip into your blood. So, what researchers at Virginia Tech did is they hypothesized that if I'm eating a high-fat diet, it might disrupt that intestinal barrier. And if it disrupts the intestinal barrier, then the endotoxins could get into your bloodstream. And that fat itself might even escort them into the bloodstream. So if a high-fat diet allows the toxins to get into the blood, that can disrupt my cells. Is this true? What they did is they used a 55% fat diet, that's a high-fat diet, for 5 days. Again, not a long study, very short study. And what they measured was how much endotoxin is in your blood. On the left-hand side, you see before the high-fat diet, a relatively low level of endotoxin. On the right-hand side, you see after the high-fat diet, the endotoxin levels double. Okay, so this seems to support the hypothesis that a fatty diet disrupts the intestinal protective barrier, allowing toxins to enter your bloodstream. Well, so what? The problem then is when we look at the ability of the cells to metabolize. Normally, when you have a meal, your mitochondria leap into action and they give you energy. That's what you're seeing in the left 2 bars. Before you are on a high-fat diet, if you give people a meal, you see a big jump in their metabolism. That's glucose oxidation. That's normal. That should always happen. You eat foods, you oxidize the glucose. You use the sugar that came in. But the right-hand side, these other 2 bars show that after I've given you a high-fat diet for 5 days, then I give you a meal challenge, and the increase in your cellular oxidation, the glucose oxidation, is very, very little. It's blunted because something about that fatty foods is disrupting the cell's ability to work. What is it? Well, we believe it's the endotoxins coming from the bacteria entering your cells and disrupting your mitochondrial activity. So we've now seen many, many reasons why a high-fat diet interferes. It makes your cells not work well. Okay, now you might be saying, wait, I know someone who's had diabetes, not just for a year or 2, but for many years, and now has all kinds of symptoms, including neuropathy. Can anything help at that late stage? Well, we asked that question. We brought in 34 women and men. They all had type 2 diabetes. They had had it for many years. They had painful neuropathy. It's pins and needles or stabbing pain in your feet, sometimes in your fingers. A control group was given vitamin B12, and an experimental group was given the same B12 plus a vegan diet. Why did we use B12? Because you need B12 for healthy nerves and healthy blood. And so we wanted to make sure that everyone had that on board. But the experimental group also had the low-fat, healthy vegan diet. And it was what you already know about: no animal products, low oil, low glycemic index. And the first thing we asked is, how do you feel? And do you feel any better at all? And on average, the control group in orange said, well, they were about a 3. I guess maybe I'm a little better. I don't know. The green line was the people on the vegan diet. And they said, yes, I'm between somewhat better and moderately better. All right. That was how they felt subjectively. We then did an objective test, which we do through galvanic skin response. You can put your hands on a metal plate where you're looking at the nerve's ability to produce perspiration. And you also do it in the feet. And it gives you an objective measure as are the nerves recovering. And what we found is that in the control group, they really weren't. That's orange. In the vegan group, by 20 weeks, the nerves were starting to recover their function. Now, 20 weeks is not a long period of time, but what we saw in that period of time in late-stage diabetes, the nerves were starting to repair, starting to get healthy again, so that we saw subjective and objective signs of improvement. All right, one last thing I just want to mention. Despite your best efforts to follow a very healthy diet, there are people who are manufacturing products that maybe don't have your best interests at heart. And you'll find that these are in front of you just about everywhere you go these days. And some people are particularly vulnerable to these. And let me share with you something. These are two brain cells. On the left-hand side, you see what I'm going to call the presynaptic neuron. This is a brain cell that is loaded up with little round vesicles containing little black dots. Those black dots are dopamine. Dopamine is a pleasure chemical, the reward chemical. When you do something that should give you a reward, the dopamine goes from the left-hand cell across that cleft to the right-hand cell. Nature programmed this for if we find a good food source or a receptive mate, you get a little bit of dopamine. Now, I didn't devise this system. This is what nature had in mind for us, but that's the way it works. Now, let's say you have a lot of receptors on the right-hand cell. See all those receptors? They're like docks, welcoming boats that have come across this river. If you have a lot of receptors, the dopamine can attach. It gives you a sense of pleasure, and you feel good. In fact, you feel pretty good all day long because your dopamine system is functioning. Some people are born with a genetic trait. Look at those receptors on the right. Now look at that. Some people are born with fewer dopamine receptors. So the dopamine still goes across the cleft, but it doesn't last long. And if it doesn't find a receptor before it dissipates, you don't feel very good. This trait is called the DRD2 TAC1 allele. That stands for dopamine receptor D2 TAC1 allele. It's totally genetic. You can get it from your mother or your father or both. And if you have this gene, then you just don't feel as good as other people do. But what you discover is that if you smoke a cigarette, you feel a little bit better because the nicotine causes dopamine to be produced. And so you get a little extra burst of it. Or you take a drink of alcohol, or some caffeine, or some cocaine, or some heroin, or compulsive eating, or compulsive gambling. All of these things cause extra dopamine to flood across that cleft. The point is that if you have this gene, you are especially vulnerable to all of these things and all the destruction that they can cause, including overeating. Is this common? In the general population, perhaps 1 in every 8 or 10 people has this gene. However, in one of our diabetes research studies, we took blood samples from everyone. And we found that in people with type 2 diabetes, 1 in every 2 has this gene. What does this mean? What it means is that you might have had a family history of diabetes. Maybe you're vulnerable to getting it. But if you also have a gene that makes you vulnerable to anything that will give you extra dopamine, including eating a sugary donut and having extra chocolate and overeating, then those temptations may be harder to resist. Now, you're probably saying, where do I get tested? Let me encourage you not to think so much about that, because actually every one of us is vulnerable to temptations. And there are food scientists who are working very hard day after day to find the exact mix of sugar and cocoa butter to put into a chocolate bar to seduce everyone. So whomever you may be, there are people who are going to try to get you hooked. And I hate to say it, some foods act like drugs, and they act that way for everybody. So if you have found that you were attracted to something, and maybe even you had a slip, and you ate something you wish you didn't, forgive yourself. This is biology. This happens. Dust yourself off and get back on the wagon. But on the other hand, this also means that we do better not tempting ourselves. You'll know people who say, okay, yeah, I like it. This healthy diet sounds pretty good. Maybe I'll do it most of the time, but now that the program's done, maybe I'll just kind of go back to, I'll include some of the other foods I missed. That is a very precarious thought, because very soon your dopamine system will take over your judgment and you're going to be right back where you started. Now, I'm a child of the 1960s, and we never liked rules. But I have to say, I've come to discover that there are some foods that I may love that just don't love me back. And if I set up a rule saying, you're not in my life anymore, I find I do a little bit better. So there are certain times of special vulnerability when we are hungry, when we're angry, when we're lonely, when we're tired. Halt. That's a useful thing that we learned from our other colleagues who are treating not just diabetes, but alcoholism or drug addiction or smoking or whatever. Look at the times of vulnerability and be aware of it. So when unhealthy foods are calling your name, at these times you'll see it. Okay, a healthy diet, fruits, grains, legumes, vegetables, and very quickly you know that you need B12. It's not optional. You really do need it for healthy nerves and healthy blood, and the amount you need is very, very small, but you don't want to miss it. Now, if someone is watching this program because you were dragged in by a friend who said you really need to pay attention to this, and you're thinking, well, I'd love to be healthy, it sounds great, but I'm sure it's completely impossible. Let me share with you how we do this in our clinic. I have never seen anyone unable to do this. Step one is you just take a week and check out the possibilities of healthful foods. Take a piece of paper, and for 7 days, write down food ideas of things that don't have any animal products in them. You might need some suggestions, but you'll think of them. A breakfast that is entirely plant-based, a lunch, a dinner. And after a week or so, you'll have a list. Very good. Now, step two is to take your list and for 3 weeks, eat those foods. For 3 weeks, no animal products, and keep oils very, very low. After 3 weeks, and by the way, you'll see that's very easy because, frankly, you could do anything for just 3 weeks, and you've already made your list, so it's easy to do. At the end of that time, two things will have happened. Physically, you'll feel better. Your blood sugar is better. You're losing weight. Your digestion is better. Your mood is better. But the second thing is that your attitudes about foods are changing. You're discovering you didn't really miss the foods you thought you couldn't live without. And you're discovering new foods. And you're discovering new products and new books and new ideas. In fact, you're discovering you have friends who've been doing this for a long time, wondering where you've been. So it's a wonderful voyage of discovery. You want to make sure you get there. Before I finish, I just want to say one last thing. The people who have put this program together for you are wise and inspired and are doing the most wonderful thing that they can do. They're saving lives. But the people who need this information the most aren't watching right now because they're only 12 years old. And they'll go to school. They'll be with their friends. They'll learn about foods that are going to hurt them over the long run. They're going to start gaining weight. And they're going to start thinking, well, maybe it's because I'm spending too much time playing with my phone and I should be exercising more. They're going to blame themselves. When in fact, the blame might go to some not so healthy foods that found their way in front of them. And when they end up with diabetes, they're going to be told, well, it's just your genetics. There's nothing you can do. And if they have other problems, they're going to be told that it's just fate. Well, there may be things that we can't control, but let's control the things that we can. And so if we'll take this information and not only profit from it individually, but actually share it with our loved ones, share it with our coworkers, share it with our communities. If together we make some noise, we'll reach lots of people. We'll never know how many lives we save. But I guarantee you, just as the people who brought you this program are saving lives day after day after day, you will be part of that life-saving team as well. We're a team working together. Let's change this world. Thank you very much for allowing me to share this time with you.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for presenting with such great speed, newer insights that our crowd, our audience would be loving and learning from. What I would like to do from here, Dr. Barnard, is to take you through a little journey of how the last 1 year has been and culminated in the last 3 days. What are the results with respect to reduction of weight, fat, glucose tolerance test, cholesterol, hypertension. We'll be just showing their names and the awards winners, and would just allow yourself to just soak in to their smiles and the joy that the entire families have got because of this wonderful change that they've been working with us for the last 1 year. We've been doing this program for the last 6 years. This is the 6th year now. It's called Muktotsav. Mukti is a Sanskrit word saying freedom. So it's a festival of freedom. And in this particular year, what happened, as I mentioned, was 182 people cleared glucose tolerance test, 110 cleared impaired glucose tolerance, which means they just missed it because of Dawn's phenomena a little bit, or maybe the PP sugars went above 140 by a few points. 85 people lost more than 20 kgs of weight, okay, and they were awarded, and there are hundreds of them. There are hundreds of them who lost 10 to 20 kgs of weight. The number is literally in hundreds, okay? So the countries from where all of these cleared the GTT and IGT, we find, especially abroad, you just can't go to the clinic and ask for a glucose tolerance test. Your primary healthcare provider has to sign it off. So people from US, from UK, from Qatar, from Sharjah, from UAE, Nigeria, Tanzania, Singapore, and Australia, besides India, cleared glucose tolerance test or just kind of couldn't make it because of a few points. And within India itself, 16 states, people did this test and they cleared with great flying colors. Maharashtra, which is the state in which we are based out of Pune, okay, a smaller city amongst all the bigger cities in India, and Karnataka. These are the two top states, like Bangalore, you may be familiar with more. So a lot more people from Bangalore and Maharashtra passed the glucose tolerance tests. What we actually did was we had day one, 3 days back, where we gave something called as Freedom Champion Awards. 2 days back, we gave the weight loss, athletic, and special awards. And yesterday was a big day where Padma Shri Dr. Shashank Joshi ji was there to felicitate the GTT Champions Awards. So I'm just going to take like 3-4 minutes through the presentation, glittery presentation done by our team. Day one, Freedom Champion Awards. What all we did on this day was, first we felicitated people who've been free for the last 7 years, since the time of our inception. So we had Lalitaji, who's free since March 2013, and Atulji, who's been free for the last, again, 7 years. He's been clearing GTT every year for the last 5 years. He's 72 years young. He climbs mountains, travels across the world. Wonderful human at 72. Okay. Each one of them is a very, very powerful freedom story. This is very interesting. What we also looked at, something like a little surprising element, where like you can see, we can see your face, your eyebrows going a little up. She was on 35 years of insulin and she's been free of it for the last 3 years. So-called miraculous freedom story, but we know miracles can be predicted through science if they follow the protocol, the way it should be followed. And one more, Premchand Godaji, he was free of 31 years of insulin and he's been free for last almost 1.5 years now. Okay. Then we looked at an award called as the Insulin Terminator Award, which was maximum number of units of insulin stopped. And from Odisha, Sanjay Rekha is there, who's stopped 240 units since last 3 years. She's free of it. And we had Sairam becoming free of 125 units this year. So this was the Insulin Terminator Award given on day one. Then longest hypertension reversal story. 39 years of hypertension medicines free and doing very well, Ramchandra Bhatt. 22 years of high cholesterol and statins completely free. Okay, Dayanand. And hypothyroid also, though because it's more autoimmune in nature, we find lesser number of people becoming free, but we've got a sizable number of almost 41 people who are free of thyroid medications. We have around 700 plus free of cholesterol and around 250 or 300 people free of hypertension. So we felicitated them. And day one, we also felicitate people who cleared impaired glucose tolerance, which means they just kind of missed it by a few marks. Seema, she's been having diabetes since 8 years, 46 years. And Sanjay, he was taking 13 years insulin. 13 years of insulin, has come very close to clearing glucose tolerance stats. It's a wonderful achievement. More than 50 years of age, we had Anusuya with 15 years of diabetes in the female category, and Pashupati, more than 15 years in the male category, taking the awards for IGT. So this was day one, okay, a celebration over 1.5 hours, presented to you in like a few minutes. And day two was the healthy weight loss and many other awards. So we had categories of 20 to 25 kgs. Swati, she's in US, she's in California. Okay, we've got a lot of participants in US who are clearing. And thanks to online, thanks to COVID, we've been able to do this gala celebration for 4 days. Otherwise, usually every year, this was just a one-day celebration and we didn't have so many awards. So this year, we are a very creative, innovative team. So we created more awards so that, more people come to know what all is happening with them. So 25 kg male category for the non-diabetic. We had a non-diabetic category and diabetic category. Chanakya did that. And Debashish was 25 kgs in the 20 to 25 kg male. In fact, he's lost more weight later. He's now 32 kgs weight loss. In 25 to 35 kgs, we had a Dr. Neal Barnard from Thane, Mumbai. And from Delhi, we had Sudhir Mohan Gupta ji with 32 kgs of weight loss. And all this happened in a matter of, this would come to like 70 pounds or so. Okay, all this happened in a matter of 5 months, 6 months, 4 months, 8 months, something like that for different people. Okay, more than 35 kg. This time we had a record created by Philip Anandraj from Gurgaon with 57 kgs of weight loss. He's more than 60 years of age. And we also had fittest. Yes, we had a lot of interesting awards like Fittest Couple Award, Fittest Family Award. So Chanak and his wife Ruby got that award for losing 37 kgs between both of them. And Fittest Family was from a very small town in Bihar, India, Bhagalpur, Mr. Ajit Jain and his family losing 38 kgs amongst 4 of them. Okay, that's the Fittest Family Award. And then what you showed as, marathoners, we have something called as Diabetes Group, which is headed by Dr. Malhar, one of our exercise science expert who heads the team. And he's got 6-7 groups of 250 people each who run marathons, who cycle, who do 108 Surya Namaskaras, swim, triathletes, ultra marathoners, and we promote a lot of this in a very systematic manner. And we have ultra marathon finisher Mrunalini, many full marathons she's completed. It was less than 60 years category. Ankush, again ultra marathon finisher with many full marathons done. And all of these people have never ever run a marathon, even 5 kilometer or 10 kilometer before joining the program. And that's the best part of the story. We had a very interesting gentleman, Thomas, down south at 68. He's really cycling very well. In fact, from US also we had Arvind who was cycling. So there were nominations, 4 nominations for each, and he was the winner amongst them. Then what we are also promoting, very interestingly, is intermittent fasting, water fasting, juice feasting, and we have innovated the protocol. We started with a 48-hour fast 3 years back. Some people did a 5-day fast in a year's time. Some people started doing 10 days fast. And Dr. Teju Solomon from Nasik has done 32 days of fasting, and a lot of transformation at a psychological level, at a social level has happened along the whole process, because a lot of people who gain weight is because of the stresses that are there in her life. And she shared a beautiful story of how her stress made her gain weight, and the stress also reversed as the fast went ahead, and a lot of changes have happened. We do some intense work called inner transformation. We blend diet with exercise and inner transformation stories where they're taken through stress release and positivity building. So Nalini from Bangalore got the award because she had 10 transformations in her life. A beautiful story she shared with us. And in the male category we had Pulkit, who's heading HR for a very responsible corporate, and a complete transformation. His face had black marks on the side which have disappeared. He's lost 20 kgs of weight. He's off insulin, off tablets, even cleared GTT, IGT, and doing very, very well. So he got this award. And this was a very special story because we also do something called as Ho'oponopono, okay, which is a Hawaiian technique for healing for their family members. And Nina used it with her son, and there was a dramatic reduction in anxiety and depression of her son. So energetically, we work a lot on energy, Dr. Barnard, and we've got a basic principle says energy follows intention, energy follows intention, energy follows intention. So a lot of meditations are done together in the mornings, 5:30 a.m. and everybody joins the 5 a.m. club after 3 months. We've got 5 phases in the program, and step by step, in the first phase more on diet, and the third phase we start doing more on stress. Fourth phase onwards we increase the exercise after the fat is reduced. So that's how we go about. Most diligent participant, those who take interest and take follow-ups, 26 follow-ups. Lalita from Pune got that award. Graceful Aging Award. This gentleman right now is in US, he's from Tamil Nadu. He's looking, feeling 15 years younger, 80 years young, off medications, blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol. With 6 years of diabetes, with 16-18 kgs weight loss, he got the award. We also have a phenomenon of mentoring. So old participants take on the responsibility of coaching new people free of any charges. They volunteer, and they've been volunteering for the last 6 years. So Sachiba, who's volunteered almost for 247 participants, who herself is having 1.5 LADA diabetes and handles a lot of type 1. She got the award, and Shashank, he got in the male category. Okay, he's mentored and got 51% people free. Of course, doctor's role is there, diet expert role is there, exercise expert role is there. The whole process is quite complex, but mentoring also plays its role in reversal. And this is something, Dr. Barnard, you should pay very careful attention to, because this kind of data is unheard, unseen at times. I've seen somebody on insulin, and now we have 7 people who were on insulin, and it is told medically that by the time you go on insulin, 70% of your beta cells are completely damaged. It's very difficult to clear glucose tolerance tests. We have Dhanraj Rathwal clearing GTT at the age of 70, at the age of 67, with 30 years of diabetes and 7 years of insulin, has become free of that. And this was a super special award which we gave yesterday. This was one of the last awards of yesterday. So we just want to show you a short video, and then we'll move to question answers of people with smiling photos of winners. So yes, technical team, can we just have that video on for a short time, please, before we go into the question answer session. I hope everybody's enjoyed that short video. And Dr. Barnard, we are ready for this wonderful time with you. Wonderful presentation, great insights, question answers going to make even more interesting. So our first question to you, Dr. Barnard, is you are the founding president of PCRM, which has been doing such seminal work, wonderful contribution to humanity. I'm sure people would love to hear a little bit more, though a lot of information is there on the internet. What would you like to just share? What are the exact activities that you do through PCRM?
Oh, well, thank you for asking that. Just very briefly, I began the Physicians Committee in 1985, and I was recently out of my medical training. I went to medical school and did my residency in Washington, D.C., and I traveled to New York to take my first job. And I started to feel that we do a pretty good job of diagnosing illness, and that we do a fairly good job of treating it, but we weren't doing anything about preventing it. In other words, a heart attack was something that was becoming more and more likely in a patient, but we didn't intervene until the patient came into the emergency room door. We didn't deal with breast cancer until it showed up on a mammogram. So I thought we needed to bring medicine to think more about prevention. And the most important part of that was what we eat. So I started the Physicians Committee back at that time, and we've grown quite a lot. And so now we do clinical research studies. I showed a couple of them in the course of my presentation. We were doing many, many others. But we also have educational programs, both for lay people and for physicians and other healthcare providers, including an annual conference, and we're very busy there too. I might mention that we're also concerned about ethical issues, that ethics have to be the foundation of medical practice and also of research. So we have a whole other wing of our work that works to focus our medical research not on animal experiments and other cruel things, but on more ethical ways of doing research, and we've been very successful. I'm happy to tell you that just this past week, the U.S. government agreed to begin a new program of alternatives to the use of animals in the Food and Drug Administration, after we've been pushing them for several years to do this, and they finally agreed this past week. So anyway, those are some of the areas of work, and our website is pcrm.org.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sure a lot of people are going to visit it and maybe take up the education program, which is for lay people if they are non-doctors. And those who are doctors, we urge all doctors to please go up and sign up as a doctor member of the PCRM team. It's going to benefit a lot of people in times to come. So one more interesting question, which is still there, and that is, you would have faced certain challenges in the initial days, because since '85 you kind of got that idea, that spark of prevention. By I think 2005, 2007, the book got launched. What challenges were you facing that time when you were taking on the mantle of diabetes reversal, and what challenges continue till date?
I think there are maybe two big issues. I mean, there are many issues. One issue is that industry does fight sometimes. As I mentioned in my presentation, there are people making money from unhealthy foods. And so they are very creative at what they do, and they make sure that unhealthy foods are in front of us all the time. But I think a bigger challenge than that probably is just our own internal, sometimes resistance to things that is often based on the culture in which we grew up. Our parents and the communities that we were surrounded with did the best that they knew. But in years past, we didn't know what we know today. And when I was growing up as a child in Fargo, North Dakota, we thought you should have meat in your diet as the best source of protein and iron, and that plants won't bring that to you. And that you should have milk for strong bones. And of course, we've learned so much since that time, and we've learned that the healthiest nutrition is really very, very different. It's plant-based. But some of those bits of mythology do live on. And so that continues to be an issue. That said, neither of these are insurmountable. When I mentioned that industry sometimes fights us, industry helps us too. There are so many companies now that are saying, if you want to get healthy, we'll find ways to help you to do it. And so they are marketing healthier products and movies and educational materials and all kinds of things, apps that you can use on your phone that make it easier than it has ever been. And it seems like every 5 minutes, a new vegan cookbook comes out, whereas none of this was the case before. And when it comes to individuals changing their diet and conquering their own demons, more and more people are going this way than ever before. And the biggest change in the past 10 years or so is that celebrities are doing this too, particularly athletes. And they're showing that a plant-based diet is not just good for your health overall, it's good for your performance. And that's very inspiring to the young generation.
So how would you rate your satisfaction level, after you wrote the book, which is, of course, a truly seminal work of, art and science together? Overall movement, the way world has moved in the last 15, 20, 25 years, especially last 15 years, how would you rate your scale on, let's say, 0 to 10, your personal satisfaction level with which the world has taken on reversal as a path?
Yes, great question. I have to say I'm delighted to see the progress that has occurred. That's really wonderful to see. And yet, for many people, it still remains only a possibility for them because they haven't yet put it to work. And so I feel that our job now is to help make sure that that message gets out there loud and clear, and especially to young people, so that their lives can be lived in a healthy way. And hopefully, they don't have to reverse anything because they will have stayed healthy all lifelong.
Yes, sure. So the number on 0 to 10 would be where? 6, 7, 8?
Well, I have to say I'm very, very pleased. You can put me at the maximum scale to see the progress that has been made. But when it comes to also being very determined to make sure that other people take advantage of this, put me at a 10 on the determination scale.
Oh, lovely. That's so nice to hear. So, another question, very, very important, which some senior doctors told me that if you're meeting Dr. Barnard, you must ask this question. And it's so important because the whole medical fraternity also needs to start, not just sitting on the fence, but absorbing, embracing, and, promoting reversal. So in spite of enough evidence, which is called bulldozer evidence, there's so much of evidence about reversal. In fact, we've been also saying reversal is a reality and deep reversal is also a possibility. We've been promoting that. And this whole initiative of Muktotsav has always been to reach out to maximum number of people, to wake them up from their slumber or ignorance, and just kind of open this possibility up. So the question was, despite this bulldozer evidence about reversal from you and so many people, why is it still not accepted mainstream? Why is it still not seeing the light in the national and international guidelines? And why are practitioners also ignoring reversal?
Yes, well, happily, the approach that we're describing is accepted in certain ways. The work that I described from our team that was done back in 2003 was funded by the U.S. government. And the initial findings were published in 2006 by the American Diabetes Association. And I was able to present to the ADA our data. And so there was broad acceptance. And then it has come into not only ADA policy, but in 2015, the U.S. government, in releasing the dietary guidelines for Americans, listed plant-based diets among the top 3 healthy regimens for people to follow. And that was reinforced this year when the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee came out with its report. So there is from the scientific world, great acceptance that what we are saying is right. Now, some people will water it down a little bit, and they will say, well, go mostly in a plant-based direction, but maybe not completely or whatever. But that's all kind of the range for negotiation. I think that, though, that you're putting your finger on something very important, which is that there are practitioners who are not yet using this approach and may not even be very knowledgeable about it. And I have to say that when I talk with practitioners and try to ask them, why don't you talk with your patients about it? It seems to be something kind of structural with them. In other words, they can be convinced that it will work, but they let various things get in their way. They imagine that the patient won't want to change. Well, that's true in a sense. If a person is a smoker, they don't really want to give up smoking. They're glad to be smoking. But once you learn that it causes lung cancer and it may kill you, then you decide maybe I wouldn't mind making some changes. And the same is true with meat eating and other unfortunate habits. So people do need education. The other thing, though, I have to say that if a healthful diet is made an automatic part of medical practice, it is much more likely to be prescribed. What I mean by that is this. If a person sees the doctor and the doctor has to just decide on the spot what to say, it's easy for the doctor to write a medical prescription. But if it's the medical practice's standard operating procedure, that everybody with type 2 diabetes will be seen by a registered dietitian who is an expert in a plant-based diet, and that's just the way they do it, then it becomes automatic. Correct. And when we use an electronic medical record, where we can now automatically print out information sheets and things for the patient to take home. If it should be an automated part of the system that anyone who is diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, with obesity, with hyperlipidemia, with hypertension, should automatically, as part of the electronic medical record system, they should be given simple information about making diet changes, recipes to take home and to share with the people preparing the foods that they eat, and other resources, including things like movies and things that can be inspiring as well as educational. If all of these materials were an automatic part of medical education, medical practice, then I think our problems will be much, much smaller.
And when could that day come?
Well, that day can come right away. With all medical practices now are using electronic medical records, and what they have a certain procedure where they can load up information into their system. So all it takes is one person who's an administrator for that practice. There are practices around here where they may have 10, 12, 15, 20 physicians, or in some hospital systems, hundreds and hundreds of doctors. And all that has to happen is an administrator has to say, I want everyone in this who comes in to see a doctor here to be given this life-saving information. Make it happen, and it becomes an automated part of the patient checkout system. So that's the revolution that I would like to see today, so that we're not depending on a doctor to make the right thing and to be well educated. Just make it automatic so that it'll happen.
Wonderful. I mean, that would be really a great day where more and more hospitals are doing it, because everybody is working so individualistically based on their own preferences, their exposures. As the wave catches up, I'm sure these days we'll also start seeing the light more and more as we move along. One more technical question has come, and I'm sure you would have some great insights research-wise on this, and that is, what is the relation between food AGEs, advanced glycated end products, and its relation to diabetes, CVD, renal failure, cancer, multiple sclerosis? Anything that your research team has done on this?
Yes, we do have here in our laboratory the technology. It's called an AGE reader, and it's just what you said. It's an advanced glycation end product. And what we're looking at is basically the downstream, if I can put it this way, sort of cellular destruction or modification that comes from the effects of a not very healthy diet. And it can be tested really quite simply. And it's, for us, still somewhat new. And so we're doing these studies, and in the course of other trials where we look at a diet's effect on weight and insulin sensitivity, we have been, for the past couple of years, been looking at AGEs as well. The good news is that you don't need one diet to lose weight, and another diet for your blood sugar, and a third diet to get your AGEs improved. The same kind of diet does seem, in fact, to improve them all. And I might mention that for some people, improvements in their AGEs are actually one of their biggest motivators as well.
That'd be interesting. I mean, look forward to more publications on that. And of course, the solution is simple, as you mentioned. We don't need more data. You just shift to a plant-based diet and everything works. So, like, getting a little India-specific, okay? Of course, human beings are human beings across the world. Of course, there are variations here and there. But over here in India, there's a strongly entrenched belief that, you know, diabetes does run in families, which is, of course, a belief everywhere across the world also, I would say. And the culture in terms of food and dairy is quite intertwined in this country. The hereditary nature of the disease, the food that we eat. What would be some specific thoughts you would love to share for us Indians with respect to these beliefs related to hereditary and dairy association, which is there since a long time, ages, Krishna's time. There are mythological tales and many, many things are associated with it. Yeah.
Let me say that in my travels to the Indian subcontinent and going both in the north and the south and traveling around, I've been extremely impressed by the beauty of the Indian traditional diet. That simple, wonderful foods like spinach and potatoes and lentils can be transformed into culinary masterpieces that frankly make the foods that I grew up with in Fargo, North Dakota, the foods that I grew up with are extremely pedestrian by comparison. However, I do think that it's possible to ruin a good thing. So you may have a wonderful culinary tradition, but then a little extra paneer comes in, and a little extra yogurt comes in, and a little extra cooking oil comes in, and then I've got a few extra kilos on my scale, and my blood sugar is coming up a little bit much. And to me, I think that the important thing is to remember where we started. And that's with these beautiful raw ingredients that nature has provided. Let me say a word, if you don't mind, about the cow. And I don't want to speak about India for now. I want to speak about America. And you can draw a lesson for India if you would like. When I was growing up, I grew up in North Dakota. And we were all taught that you should have milk every day, that you should have 3 glasses of milk every single day. And as time went on, we started to learn that milk's main ingredient is sugar, lactose sugar. We don't need that. Its second ingredient is fat, mostly saturated fat. I don't need that. It has estrogens in it that come from the cow. I don't need that. But if you don't mind, I then started learning something about the cows. And although I'm a doctor and I'm not a philosopher, I became troubled by something. And that is that cows don't make milk until they've been impregnated. And the way that happens here in the United States is that some underpaid farm assistant takes a glove and puts it all the way up to his shoulder and inserts his hand into the rectum of the cow, up to his elbow, and through the rectal wall he can feel the uterus, where he then through the cervix injects what looks like a knitting needle and injects semen that has been taken from a bull. And what they're doing is they're impregnating that cow. Now, she is not a volunteer, but she can't resist because she's chained up by the neck. And 9 months later, she will give birth whether she wants to or not. And when she gives birth, all the people around, they gather because it's very touching to see this awkward baby calf that she has just given birth to. And the calf looks up at the mother, and the mother looks down at her baby. And she starts to clean the baby. And the baby tries to stand up awkwardly. And you see a little tear come into the eye of the people who are watching. But then they say, wait a minute, this is a dairy. That baby can't drink the cow's milk because we want that milk to sell. And so they take that baby calf, pick the calf up by the chest, and put the calf into a wheelbarrow and carry the calf away. And the mother is bonded with that baby, with a bond that's stronger than anything else we have in biology, and she follows. And she says, in effect, in her own way, that's my baby you're taking away, and then a gate will slam in her face. And if that baby is a male, that baby will be killed, because there are people here who have a taste for the rubbery muscle tissue of a baby male calf. They call it veal. If she's a female, she'll never see her mother again. She'll be left in an isolation hutch and fed a milk replacer until she's old enough to be impregnated herself. And this happens every single year to every cow on every dairy in the United States and in Europe and even in India. And I'm sorry to say that by about age 4, the normally 20-year lifespan of that cow will be cut short here, because our dairy farmers are good business people. They realize if she's not putting out as much milk as she was when she was 2 or 3, let's slaughter her, sell her for meat and for hide, and replace her with her daughter and impregnate her and take her milk. I want to say that although I'm not a philosopher, I started to think maybe there is something to be learned by respecting animals leaving them alone, not taking their products, not taking their children, not manipulating their reproduction, and treating them with the respect they deserve. Now, when I travel to India, I know that people have very, very strong feelings of respect for the creation that we're in. And it may be that one of the most respectful things that we can do is to respect the other animals, respect our health, and respect our children by following a healthy diet that doesn't require exploitation.
Wow. I'm sure everyone watching would be still ruminating into the visuals that were created through your narration, and yes, taking it to their minds and their hearts and taking appropriate decisions about what they need to do regarding their own health and life on this planet. Amazing. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that hearty share, Dr. Barnard. And yeah, we've got some more time. So as you know, I mean, as I mentioned, Dr. Zishan, and we've been in touch for the last 3 years. They tried to do some small initiatives in Chennai and different cities. And maybe the news about our little work has reached you. FFD, Freedom from Diabetes, is getting recognized as, I would say, maybe the premier or the first, because the largest number of people are becoming free through our work in this country. And of course, the number is huge. Even if you've done 7,500, it's still a small droplet in a big ocean that we need to kind of contribute and work. Many people are still coming late to us. They're not coming immediately. They're coming after, I saw 30 years, 20 years, they're coming late to us. We're trying to work on things to create change through events like this, okay, through programs, simple programs, 2-hour programs, opening up to 1-year programs or whatever. So what would be your advice, message to us to further our mission, our goals, our intentions? What would be your, I mean, as a super senior person who hasn't really met us much before, but you've seen the work, what would you say to us?
Well, first of all, I think what you have done already is incredible. It's so impressive to see. And you can see it not only in the overall numbers that you have presented, which are so impressive, but you see it in the face of every single person when you showed the awardees, and you can see that sense of not only achievement, but empowerment and confidence that they are taking with them and that they're transmitting to other people. So I have to say, if you never did one more thing in your life, you already would have achieved so much that is wonderful. But I know you're not about to stop now. There is so much more to do. And I personally think that we never know which kinds of initiatives will pay off the most. And I think we have to simply be vigorous and experiment and always try new things. For example, working with the public directly versus working with caregivers. We try to see which reaches the most people. Working with governments, governmental bodies, and our professional society. So we do all of these things. But you said something I think that was also really wonderful just now. The pandemic has come in. The pandemic is terrible. But you turned it into a way to reach perhaps more people than ever before, because we're forced to be in our little Zoom boxes. Well, there are lots of boxes that can accommodate so many people, and you've taken advantage of that technology. So I think what you're doing of not only putting this power to work and having saved so many lives as you already have, but continuing to experiment with new ways to make your megaphone even louder. I think that's exactly the way to go.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for reinforcing our own confidence in whatever we are doing, because we do have a very strong intention of getting 100,000 diabetics free, documented in another 4 years if possible. And yes, during COVID times, it's been an amazing journey because we were already online before COVID. It took us very little time to just make some modifications. The app was ready, the softwares were ready over the last 6-7 years. It just, I mean, the whole team just, right now also 120 people are working from home. like duck takes to water, fish takes to water. It was so easy for us. Yes, we've done almost 4 times more number of reach outs than last year, what we could do this year. And the future looks very, very promising as we move ahead. And if you say this is the way, just keep doing this, doing it better, so be it. We'll be at it. And yes, research papers publication, our team would be very closely, I would say, watching it. A lot of endocrinologists in this country and many doctors have supported us. Many senior doctors have supported us. And they would be watching and really looking at churning out some more papers from the system as time goes by. So wonderful, wonderful, I think, time we spent together and tried to get some insights from a presentation, through some question answers. I think it'll be good to move towards the closing things of this program. And yes, just for everybody's information, Dr. Barnard has promised to spend time with our entire team of 120 people who will be coming online at 9:30 sharp, so that we can just have some cozy time together and have his brilliant eyes and succinct words guide us further. Okay, so what I would love to do now as we're kind of moving towards closure of this program is to kind of formally call upon the co-founder of this organization, my better half, who's also a doctor practicing for the last 20 plus years, taking care of our inner transformation wing, stress and management wing, Dr. Neal Tripathi, to come on board to express a word of thanks. So that's Dr. Neal, co-founder and big force behind this movement. So Dr. Neal, please, a formal word of thanks. It's a 4-day affair. Thousands of people have joined and watched this. Dr. Barnard is with us. So yes, over to you.
Yeah, I'll have to speak somewhere.
Yeah, sure. So you can use this.
Okay, great. So, yes. Thanks, Dr. Barnard, for being here and gracing our event. It was wonderful. So many people out there are watching out, listening to what is happening today, and so much information has gone out. I mean, there are so many comments on this post, so many. And thanks, Dr. Guria. You look awesome as normal. I can't hear them. Can you hear me? Yes, great.
Yeah, they are on mute mode right now.
Great.
Yeah.
So, we're coming to an end now of this 4-day event, and like all of us know that an end is just a beginning of something, something very magnificent, something really, really great that is yet to uncover. Like, for example, diabetes, we were like, it's the end of life, we are a diabetic now, but then suddenly we transform ourselves and we get our lives in our control, and we know that yes, this is just the beginning. So as we conclude this 4-day freedom festival, Muktotsav, it brings about a deep sense of contentment in us, and at the same time it brings about renewed energies to serve many more in multiples in the coming years. So on this occasion, I take the opportunity to thank all the eminent speakers that had graced this event, throughout the 4 days that we were here. From all over the world, I would say, Dr. Neal Barnard, who is still with us, and it is so nice to have you here. Yesterday we had Padma Shri, Dr. Shashank Joshi ji. Then we had Dr. Deepak Dalal ji. Dr. Jagdish Hiremat ji. These are all really eminent doctors of the country and abroad. So your blessings, are needed and will definitely accelerate the whole movement even further, Thank you so much for being here with us. So I would like to thank all the participants of Muktotsav, who wholeheartedly participated in the difficult glucose tolerance test, who sacrificed so much of their comforts to become shining examples of fitness and of a balanced mind, body and soul, who kept going, putting in all their efforts to shed off all the kilos of them, kilos of weight and kilos of luggage of their bodies, of their minds and of their souls. That's the beauty. Kudos to all of you, all of you. Thanks again. Yeah. So thanks to the COAC team and our key coordinator, Viraj. Thank you so much for the seamless streaming, the light and the sound effects, we really enjoyed. Each one of us really enjoyed them. Thanks to the digital team led by Priyanka, graphics by Rajashri, the customer care that was handled by Akanksha. Thanks to the doctors team led by Dr. Smita, diet experts team led by Dr. Mamta. A special mention of Tanmay has to be there. Thanks again to the exercise science department led by Dr. Malhar and Dr. Shubhankar. Research team led by Dr. Nidhi. The operations team led by Nivruti for communicating and couriering, the GTT medals in a short span of time. So, and with a special mention of Kanchan, Dipti and Sudatta. Thank you so much. Thanks to the backbone of FFD, you've been the backbone of FFD. That is the whole of the FFD staff, the Freedom from Diabetes staff, right from the doctors to the office boys. Each one is really dear and very important to us. Thanks from the bottom of my heart to each nuclear reactor, to each atom bomb that is filled with the energies of FFD, of Freedom from Diabetes. That is the mentors who have been voluntarily and selflessly serving so many participants just out of a desire, just from a desire to share, to give their best. Thanks a ton. Thanks a ton. All said, we at FFD are very grateful to the divine energies flowing and overflowing into our containers with unconditional love, unconditional joy and abundance of health and fitness. Do keep blessing us, oh God, so that we continue to become better channels of this divine work that is happening through us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And with this, we conclude the 4-day Muktotsav, the Festival of Freedom, wishing and hoping more and more diabetics become free in the coming years. Thank you so much.
Yes, but the program cannot get over with the key person who holds the program for the last 6-7 years. So let's get Dr. Duriya back on stage to take us through. Yes, Dr. Duriya, the program can't get over without you. Huge thanks to you.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Duriya is the 4th doctor amongst the 30 doctors that we have. She's been with us for 7 years now and taking care of a lot of wonderful initiatives all along. So yes,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Duriya, over to you.
Yes.
Go ahead, Dr. Duriya.
All right. It has indeed been a delight and absolute honor for me to be associated with Freedom from Diabetes over the last 6 years and also holding the fort of anchoring the Muktotsav, the Festival of Freedom. And a special honor and great privilege to be part of this very beautiful, very special, very memorable evening that we have shared with Dr. Neal Barnard, who is so very heartily, willingly been part of this evening, shared some beautiful insights with us and encouraged and inspired us to do even more on this path. I still, as I said, I still hold this book of yours as a Bible, and it continues to inspire doctors in our organization and across the country. Well, I would also like to thank each and every one of you. It's been lovely connecting with your energies, though it's been online this time for the first time. And I have connected with people from across the country, across the world over the last few weeks, and especially in these last 4 days that we've been having this Festival of Freedom. And I look forward to being and connected and staying connected with each and every one of you in the years to come. We look forward to the next round of our Muktotsav, in which we want each and every one of you and even more to be among the 500 plus that we have visualized clearing their glucose tolerance test or their IGT, that the impaired glucose tolerance test, being champions in our next edition of Muktotsav. So stay happy, stay healthy, stay energized, continue to inspire. You all are the torch bearers who can make a difference, who can light up this world, create a diabetes-free world, in fact, create a very healthy and happy world. So to each and every one of you, thank you so much for joining us live this evening and also over the last few days. It's been an absolute pleasure. And we will see you once again next year for our next edition, a bigger, grander, and even more magnificent edition of the GTT Champions. Yes?
Start preparing for the awards right away. So many new awards this year. Next year we'll have more awards. Maybe we'll keep it online for 5 days. And the target is very clear, 500 plus next year, 1000 plus the year after that, 2022. We should go for some records, some Guinness Book, some Limca, whatever it takes, just to make reversal a reality for a much larger audience. And that deep reversal is a huge possibility across the world. So once again, big thanks to Dr. Duria, Dr. Ritu, Dr. Barnard, and all our participants, all our champions, all our award winners. It's been a pleasure. Let's rock and even create history together as we move ahead in the coming year. Yes, power pose. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, Dr. Barnard ke saath power pose. Yay. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll be closing the program now and seeing you again. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Akanksha, Priyanka, Smita, just get the entire office onto the call quickly.
Yeah, sure.
We must spend this quality time.